Chaim Tair Chsidim. We are standing today only a few short hours away before the Yom HaBohir, the special day of the Rebbe's Nesius Yud Shvat. It is 63 years formally since Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph. And we gather all over the world by virtual technology to spend a few moments together in preparation to inspire ourselves that when Yud Shvat comes, we shouldn't just be observers, but we should actually be active participants. Basi legani achesi kala. With 4 words, 63 years ago, the Rebbe transformed the entirety of history, past, present, and future. Basi lagani yachesikalo simply means that the Eibishter says, I am coming and returning to my own garden. It was upstairs in 770. We all know what the room upstairs in 770 looks like. And in that very room, the Rebbe declared, Uforatzta yama v'kedma tzafayna v'negba. That we will reach out to the east and to the west and to the north and to the south, and we will bring about the Gilui Ashchina all over the world, b'chol katzvei tevel, b'chol mokim shehu. The Rebbe's dream and goal is Kibbutz Ha'olam, Einem in the Welt. The Rebbe said, Kol Ashvin Chavivin, in the famous tune with which the Rebbe said it, that every single person sitting here in this room, that is sitting anywhere around the globe, and is a member of this generation, is Deir Ashvi. You're a member of the 7th generation, and therefore you are beloved and special. You are not just somebody that was randomly born among 6 billion people on planet Earth in a particular year. You were hand-chosen and hand-picked. As we know, as Chassidim, the Rebbe Rashab chose Talmidim that will be here in Neshamis. But more specifically, you were chosen, as the Rebbe says, Le'al Yidei B'chiraseinu. But the Eibishter chose us to be part of this particular momentous occasion in Jewish history, to transform the world and bring down Hashras Hashchina Lamata in Eretz Halazu Agashmi, right here Begashmi Yisraelim. We say Chavivin, we are special. The Rebbe says Chavivin doesn't just mean Kol Chavivin Shvin, that if you're beloved and special, then automatically you become the 7th. It's just the opposite. Kol Shvin Chavivin, if you are part of the 7th, then you are beloved and special. The very notion that we're sitting here as Deir Ashvi members, Chassidim of the Rebbe, means that you and you and you and you and you are special people. Friday night in Kabbalah Shabbos, we read in Shemay Nasrei, Ata Kidashta Es Yom HaShvi. You know it from Shemay Nasrei. Allow me just, so to speak, at a Chassidish Farbrengen to use the word instead of Yom HaShvi, Deir Ashvi. After all, it's the job of Deir Ashvi to bring light and Yom into the Deir Ashvi. So we say in davening, Ata Kidashta Es Yom HaShvi Lishmecha. You have made the 7th generation special for your name. There is a very specific purpose why the 7th generation was chosen. It was Lishmecha. for the name of the Kiddush Hashem, for the name of the Shekhinah in this world. If you're not sure what that means, we continue saying, Tachlis Maaseh Shamayim V'aretz. It is the ultimate purpose of the creation of heaven and earth. 5,774 years ago, the world was created. And Tachlis Shamayim V'aretz is Ata Kidashta as Deir Hashvi. You gave the Deir Hashvi the power, you and I sitting right here at this very moment, to bring the Yom, the light of Yom Shekulei Tov into this world. Beirachtai Mikol HaYomim. You gave him a bracha beyond any other generation. V'kidashtai Mikol HaZmanim. And you made his time, the Deir Hashvi, holier than any time in history. V'chein kasu b'seidasecha v'yichulu hashemayim v'aretz v'yikadosh Elokim es yom hashvi. The Eibishter made the seventh day holy and special. In the Maimer of Basi Lagani, which we all know, so to speak, is the official acceptance Maimer of the Rebbe as Nasi Chabad, although the Rebbe was Nasi Uvo HaShemesh V'Zarach HaShemesh from Yud Shvat the year before, but in formal terms the Rebbe waited a year till Tavshin Yud Aleph to declare publicly his Nesius. And in that Maimer the Rebbe talks at length about many aspects, whether Ein Sav Shalifni at Tzimtzum and so on, but let us focus on Avas Yisrael. And he brings a story of each of the Rabbeim. This is the Rebbe's first Maimer in public. The Rebbe is not here to be a storyteller. And the Rebbe chooses to tell a story of each of the Rabbeim. So allow me to share, please, a story or two regarding Avas Yisrael and how much the Rebbe emphasizes it and how much we see it in real life. I had the schus recently to visit a city called Nikolaev. Nikolaev, as you all know, is the city where the Rebbe was born in Tafresh Samach Beis on Yud Aleph Nissen in 1902. And in that city, if you open up any chitas, which I see sitting here on the tables, you will see in the Hakdama of the Tanya a letter written by Reb Asher Nikolaev or Reb Asher Grossman from Nikolaev, whom the Rebbe Rashab asked to edit, to take out certain typos and mistakes and so on that were in the old prints of the Tanya, which the Bocher HaZetzer, as they say in Yiddish, used to by mistake make. But in any event, the Rav of the city of Nikolaev was the Rebbe's Zayda, his maternal grandfather. The Rebbe's mother is the Rebbe Tzanchana, and her father is the Meir Shlema Halevi Yanovsky. A certain sickness that was spreading like wildfire, and for the most part, those who contracted that disease, typhus, Rahman al-Islam, it was usually a one-way ticket. They would take people that were sick with this particular disease, put them into isolation, and leave them there for as long as they can live. It usually didn't take that many weeks before a person, Rahman al-Islam, expired. It was a disease that most bodies could not withstand. Unfortunately, the Rebbe's mother's father, the Meir Shleima Alevi Yanovsky, the Rebbe of Nikolaev, contracted this particular sickness. And the government took him to this building, which was a one-way ticket for the most part. As a matter of fact, they would not even allow visitors to come to this building, because what the government was trying to do is isolate the sickness so nobody else catches it, so it no longer is contagious. So the easiest way they can do it is by removing all those sick people and putting them into a place where they cannot give that disease to somebody else. When Meir Shleima Alevi Yanovsky was brought to this particular hospital, the Chassid Rebbe Nikolayever found out about it. And his beloved Rav is in a hospital. When Rebbe Nikolayever begged the guard to let him in, finally the guard said to him, look, I cannot let you in, because when you leave, you may take the sickness with you if you catch it and spread it even further. But I will allow you and tell you where the Rebbe's Zayder, the Meir Shleim Alevi Yanofsky, is, in which bed he is, in which room. You can go to the window that is beneath his room, and you can talk to him through the window. Rebbe Nikolayever went to the window, to the ground, I should say, which was under that window, and nobody answered. The Meir Shleima was so weak, they couldn't have a conversation. Couldn't eat. He was lying in bed. And only the Rebbeinu Shalom knows what kind of tzaris and agmas nefesh and suffering and yisurim he was going through at that moment. But in Tanya, in Igeres HaKedesh Perek Yud Aleph, the Alter Rebbe quotes the pasuk La'askil Chabina, and he explains that when a Yid goes through hardships in life, even if it is in Bani Chaya or Mezayni, even if it comes to health and so on, a Yid has to accept everything with emunah shleima that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing it for a reason and not doubting Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe concludes that if you believe it and you accept it, and whatever Hashem does to you, you accept, then ultimately it will become toiv hagolui. It will become revealed good. Everything will be for the best. Rebbe Nikolayever went to the window and he shouted at Meir Shleima, remember what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya and Perek Yud Aleph of Igeres HaKedesh La'askil Chabina. And he recited verbatim, word for word, the entirety of Perek Yud Aleph. And he went home. He had no idea if Rabbi Meir Shleima even heard him. Nobody was responding. In any case, Rabbi Meir Shleima was lying in bed, not healthy, in a life-threatening situation, and every single day, the Chassid Rebbe Nikolayever came back to the same window for many weeks. And he said the same thing, La'askil Chabina Rabbi Meir Shleima, remember what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that everything happens from Hashem, it's all good, and believe it, and eventually it'll become Toiv HaGolui. Even if you're suffering in Ban Nechayu and Mezayna, you're suffering in the worst things of possibly in life, have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all will be fine. One day, after many weeks, and Meir Shleima suddenly wakes up and he says to the doctor, I'd like to go home. This never happened. Patient should wake up from such a condition. The doctor checks him out, says, you know what? He's healthy. And after a thorough checkup, he allows him to leave. A miracle. Usually people that come to that particular building are on a one-way ticket. Rabbi Meir Shleima had a two-way ticket. He came in, now he's coming out. He comes home, and they make for him a spontaneous Farbrengen, a Kabbalah's panim for the Rav of the city. At that Kabbalah's panim, Rebbe Nikolayever arrived, and Rabbi Meir Shleima said to him, you should know that it was your Avos Yisrael of coming to visit me every day and shouting through the window the words of the Alter Rebbe of Igeres HaKedesh La'askil Chabina Perek Yud Aleph that gave me the strength, the courage to be able to continue to fight for life and eventually to persevere and Baruch Hashem miraculously to survive. Rebbe Nikolayever never even knew if his words will have an impact. He had no idea if the person that he's talking to is conscious. He had no idea if his words will have an effect. Statistically, it was a waste of time. But Avas Yisrael doesn't mean that I invest time and effort to help somebody because I know for certain it's going to work. Avas Yisrael means that you are willing to help another Yid even when you are not certain that your efforts will bear any fruit. And that was the beauty of the Avas Yisrael of the Sheikhet of Bedek of Nikolaev, Rabbi Schneur Zalman. He allowed the Rebbe Zayda the opportunity of koyach and strength to survive this illness by virtue of his Avas Yisrael coming every day and doing the same drasha, repeating the same words, with only the hope that maybe it's going to help and survive. The Rebbe Zayda will survive the illness and be able to come out of the building alive as it actually happened. When you go to Nikolaev, a city that not many have visited, which I think we should visit more, the Rebbe's birth city, you find the opportunity and the schus to see some amazing things. You see the home and the apartment where the Rebbe was born. In Rashi it says when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, Ismalei Abayis Kulei Oira, the home became filled with light. You go and you look, it's a small tiny room where the Rebbe was born. The Rebbe was born at home. And from that, so to speak, small home came forth the largest and most powerful force in all of history. A Rebbe, a tzaddik, a nasi adoir. The Rebbe took care and takes care ad hayom hazeh of every Yid around the entire globe. If you go to Nikolaev, you see the home in where the Rebbe's parents, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak and the Rebbe Tzchana, made the bris for the Rebbe on Chai Nissen in middle of Pesach in the home of their grandfather, the Rebbe Zayda Meir Shleim Alevi Yanavsky. You see the aptek. The aptek in Russian means the pharmacy. The pharmacy that is famous for when there was a pogrom and the Rebbe was only 3 years old. He was born in 1902 and the Rebbe Tzchana in her Rishimis writes this happened in 1905. So he was only 3 years old, 1902, 03, 04, 05. He's 3 years old and there's a pogrom. And many Jewish mothers took their babies to hide behind the pharmacy, hoping that the locals that are creating this pogrom and killing and slaughtering Jews would not bother the local pharmacy that services all the local people in Nikolaev. But the Jewish babies that were sitting there behind closed doors in the back of Nikolaev's aptek, it's tiny and small. And you know when you put babies in tiny places, they become uncomfortable. And they begin to cry, which created a danger. Because of the goyim, the pogromniks, Yimach Shmam would hear the cry of babies, they would come after them. The Rebbe is 3 years old. He was only born in 1902 in Samach Beis. This is happening in Samach Hey. And the Rebbe, as the Rebbe Tzchana writes in her, the Shimis goes from child to child and soothes the pain and calms down that particular child to stop crying. Because as a Raya Yisrael, as one who really loves and cares every member of Am Yisrael, at 3 years old, as we say about Avraham Avinu, Ben Shalei Shanim Hikir Esbeirei, the Rebbe realized what is at stake. And at 3 years old, the Rebbe, so to speak, went into action and saved an entire group of mothers and babies and children from the hands, Yimach Shmam, of Goyim, Seine Yisrael, that were trying to commit a pogrom. And then you go around the corner and you see the shul where the Rebbe was raised. And you see the cheder where the Rebbe went to. Upon which the Rebbe writes the famous words, Miyem halchi lecheder. From when I went to cheder, I began to imagine in my mind in Nigris Kedesh Chelik Yud Beis Tav Yudalid, Hischil Israkim in Dimyeni Tziyur Geula Asida. The Rebbe says, I began to imagine what is Moshiach's times going to look like. Because as the Rebbe goes on to write, after so many millions of Jews that was slaughtered and butchered and their blood was spilled like water, what does the Rebbeinu Shalom have to compensate for the pain and the suffering of Am Yisrael for thousands of years? The Rebbe says, I've been dreaming about this since my childhood, and I went to Cheder, and even before so. And you're standing in the room of the Rebbe's Cheder, and you realize that in this particular Cheder, the Rebbe started revolutionizing the world, of bringing the world closer to Bias HaMashiach. You travel not far away, just a few hours in relative terms, to a little village called Igren, right outside of Dnepropetrovsk, where Lubavitch today has built an enormous, beautiful empire. And you come suddenly to a small Kever Achim, and you see the place where the Rebbe's middle brother, the Bedel, was shot, Yimach Shmam, by the Nazis. And you realize just a little bit, just a glimpse of the pain that the Rebbe must have suffered, knowing that his own brother was shot. You travel to Alma Ata, where the Rebbe's father's oyel is, Rebbe Yitzchak Schneerson, and you realize the Mesiras Nefesh, as the Rebbe says in Basi Legani Ahavas Yisrael, of both of the Rebbe's father, who devoted his life to Jews of Russia, risking his life and ultimately paying with his life. You realize the Mesiras Nefesh of the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe Tzimchana, to voluntarily join her husband, going all the way out to a remote place in Kazakhstan. They lived for almost 5 years in Chiali, in a remote village that is filled with mosquitoes and bugs and puddles of mud that never dry throughout the year. And there the Rebbe Tzimchana devoted herself to her husband so he should be able to continue his Avedas HaKedesh of Arbatas HaTeira V'Hayadus, making him ink and so on. Then you stand by his oil. As I was standing there, a Jew was standing next to me. And in few words I asked him, if you don't mind me asking you, what brings you here? And he answered me words that I shall never forget. He said, why am I here? Because I love the Rebbe. And if Rebbe Yitzchak raised the Rebbe, I came to say thank you on Chafav to the person who raised such a child that transformed the world with more than 4,000 Chabad houses around the world. Ashreinu Matayv Chalkeinu. We don't sometimes pay attention to what we have. Our minds and our Yetzaharis, as the Rebbe talks in Basi Legani, takes us away sometimes to Narishkeit. But in Basi Legani, the Rebbe says, Kadiskafya Sitra Achra, it is our job to transform the Yetzirah, to take the sheker and the falsehood of the Yetzirah and transform it into krushim, into beams and pillars, to build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this physical world. In Elam Haza Agashmi. This year will be 70 years since the Istalkus of the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. When the Rebbe talks in Basi Legani about the power of Ahavas Yisrael, we are inspired, if you pay attention, of what has happened and what the Rebbe's parents have done for Am Yisrael and giving us the matana of the Rebbe. In Lekut HaSichos, the Rebbe writes that you love a Rebbe because hu anasi v'haraish and mimenu val yodayim kol hashpois begashmis uberuchnis. Everything that we have comes from Hashem, but is channeled to us through the Rebbe. When you realize that the Rebbe is worrying about you and about me and about every single Jew around the world. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is not a Rebbe that was. It's a Rebbe that is. For the Rebbe continues, the Rebbe worries and loves you sitting right here in this room. And therefore, we respond with the love that the Rebbe shows us, kamayim apanim lepanim, at least within reason, to the power that we can have. And we devote ourselves in our own way of becoming the Rebbe shluchim as the Rebbe wants. Vert shluchim egeitainam in the Welt mit Yiddishkeit. To do what the Rebbe is asking from us. I have heard the story from Rabbi Halberstam, who worked at the Rebbe's home serving the Rebbetzin. Many years ago in the Lameds, in the 1970s, and one day, it was a Friday afternoon, and he hears the Rebbetzин's voice crying out. He looks for the Rebbetzin and he finds her at the basement steps on the Rebbe's home on President Street. And when he helped the Rebbetzin up, he asked the Rebbetzin, your foot is hurting, maybe we should go to a doctor. They went to a radiologist right here on Grand Army Plaza on the corner of Eastern Parkway. He gave them royal treatment, and he came out and he notified them, the good news is the bone didn't break. However, some ligaments tore, or a ligament tore, and therefore the Rebbetzin will not be able to stand on her feet for multiple weeks. When he brought the Rebbetzin back home to President Street, he didn't know what to do. He was in a dilemma. The Rebbetzin clearly told him, I know you probably want to let my husband, the Rebbe, know. I am asking you not to do so. On the other hand, he was a mitzvah v'aimid. The Rebbe warned him in advance that if anything should, God forbid, ever happen to the Rebbetzin, please let me know in person. So he has to tell the Rebbe. So he asked the Rebbetzin permission if I can go home and change my clothing for Shabbos. He ran to 770 and he knocked on the Rebbe's door. The Rebbe opened the door. He told the Rebbe that this is what happened to the Rebbetzin. I took her to the doctor. Everything is okay. But the Rebbetzin cannot stand on her feet, or on that foot at least, for a number of weeks. Friday night came, a few hours later, and it's time to make Kiddush. There's a dilemma here. The Rebbetzin doesn't want to aggravate the Rebbe by telling him she's not allowed to stand. But the Rebbe knows what happened because Rabbi Halberstam came to the Rebbe and told him what happened. So before Kiddush, the Rebbe turns to the Rebbetzin and he says to her, Ich sah, du bist vermattet. Besser soll sitzen auf Kiddush. I see you're tired. It's better you should sit for Kiddush. Okay? Kiddush passes, everything is fine. Now it comes time for Netilas Yadayim. Hamaitzi. The Rebbetzin says to the Rebbe, you know, I was hungry. I asked Rabbi Halberstam to make Kiddush and I washed already, so I don't have to wash now. The Rebbe says, fine. The Rebbe goes to wash. They eat the fish. After the fish, the Rebbe would sing Azamer B'Shvachim. It was Shabbos Chayelo. And the Rebbe began to sing Azamer B'Shvachim. And he's singing Azamer B'Shvachim to the tune of Avinu Malkeinu, which was unusual. And in the middle, by Yehei Rav Kamei, the Rebbe began to cry. And he's singing Yehei Rav Kamei to the tune of Avinu Malkeinu. The Rebbe's eyes are closed, the Rebbe is crying. The Rebbetzin says to Rabbi Halberstam, run to the kitchen and bring the soup and the chicken and put it on the table. After singing, the Rebbe opens his eyes, the chicken is there, the soup is there, they finish the meal. Usually the Rebbe would stay to do Shnai Mikra Vechem Targum after the meal at the table. And the Rebbe said, you know, I'm going upstairs. The Rebbetzin remains downstairs. Later, Rabbi Halberstam took the Rebbetzin upstairs when the Rebbe didn't see. And the Rebbetzin avoided telling the Rebbe the whole Shabbos that she hurt herself. The Rebbe avoided the whole Shabbos to tell the Rebbetzin, I actually know about it. But each of them spent an entire Shabbos making sure that the other Avos Yisrael should not feel hurt. The reality is that 3,300 plus years of Jewish history, of millions and millions of Yidden that were killed and slaughtered and butchered, whose blood was spilled, is waiting for you. For you to do as the Rebbe says, tut altsverser kent, and do that one mitzvah that will bring about the Isgalus of Melech HaMashiach. As the Rambam paskins, that one good deed can change the entirety of the world history. And let us conclude with the following. The Rebbe talks about Bias HaMashiach, Effen tuf de Augen. Open your eyes. I'm only one person, so I can only share one person's opinion. But what does it mean, open your eyes? When my eyes are closed, everything is dark. I don't see anything. When I open my eyes, everything is light. I see. For 3,300 years plus, Am Yisrael has been building a mansion, a palace for the Rebbeinu Shalom, for Hashras, Hashchina, in this world. But when the lights are off, you don't see anything. You don't appreciate the most beautiful palace. The lights are closed. You just don't see it. And the Rebbe is begging us, do that last mitzvah. In other words, let us turn on the switch, turn on the lights. By doing that mitzvah that will bring warmth and light of Eirach Sidis into Elam Haza Agashmi, and we will able to see and to enjoy and to benefit everything that was done throughout Jewish history. As we go to Yud Shvat, and as we go to welcome and greet Kabbalah Samalchus of the Rebbe, which is Deir Ashvi, Yom Ashvi, Yom Shekulei Shabbos. Friday night in davening we say, Hiseiriri, Hiseiriri, Kivairech, Kumiyairi. It's time to wake up. Uri Yuri Shir Dabeiri. Wake up and sing the song of Geula. Be happy and celebrate that Atat Kumt Moshiach. And we will celebrate and wake up. We will sing the song of Geula and Moshiach. V'niskazan sich mit Rebbe Dalamata. V'hu Yigalenu L'chaim.